Welcome to Vision to Venture. I'm Eddie, and I'm here to uncover the realities of scaling and building a tech startup. Each week, I speak to leaders within the tech space with their insights and advice on how to found, fund, and frame a tech startup. So make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Vision to Venture. Today, I'm joined by Floris Goes-Smit, a professional at the forefront of sports analytics and data science. With a background in health science and over a decade of experience in professional sports, Floris has transitioned into a leading role in a data-driven innovation at SciSports. Hello, Floris. How are you doing today?
Thanks a lot for the introduction, and hello to you. I'm doing great. Thanks.
Glad to hear it. Thank you so much for joining us today. So just to start with, I wanted to ask if you could share more about your transition from sports science to data science and how this journey has sort of shaped your career.
Yeah, for sure. I always like to say that I essentially started on the field working in embedded science roles in sports, particularly in professional basketball, but always passionate about the technology and data around sports, doing measurements, doing analytics. So I wanted to pursue a scientific path as well to dive deeper into that, which basically brought me to start a PhD, which was on the topic of big data in sports, particularly soccer, big data for performance analysis. So I started that journey as a sports scientist, but basically I found out that achieving the goals that I had, the scientific goals that I had, would require me to develop a lot of data science skills, right? Becoming a better programmer, learning more about machine learning and applying that. So over the course of my PhD in the 4 years that lasted, I learned a lot of the core competencies of a data scientist, and I love them as well. Really enjoyed that work. So I slowly transitioned from that on-field practical role to a more, let's say, off the field supporting role, more as a data scientist.
And what would you say sparked your interest in using computer vision for sports analytics?
Well, to be completely honest, it's also by circumstance. So the company that I work for now, SciSports, we offer a lot of data-driven products, and they are partially powered by data we generate ourselves through computer vision. Over the past years, I grew into more senior roles in the company and taking up the lead over various teams, including the computer vision team, which was in the beginning pretty far away from my day-to-day activities at that point, which were more about analyzing data and generating insights, and a little bit less about deep learning and stuff like that. But I took that responsibility also because I really like to dive into new challenges, new technical challenges, and computer vision is one of provided me with a great possibility to dive into a new technical challenge a little bit further away from my own comfort zone, so to say. It's a key product for our company, which meant that I took on both a technical challenge as well as a big responsibility, and that sparked my interest of learning about that to begin with.
Nice. And so talking about SciSports a little bit, could you just explain how SciSports camera technology works to generate tracking data for sports teams?
Yeah, for sure. Essentially, what we do is what we like to call a camera agnostic optical data tracking solution. So essentially, we just need one or two or multiple cameras with match footage that provide match footage, ideally with the full field in view, as we like to say, the 6 corners of the field, so the 4 edge corners and then the middle line intersections. And what we do with the camera technology, or with the computer vision technology, actually, because the cameras are not our own technology, we can run it on 2 iPhones if needed, for example.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have our own proprietary camera technology, but we run it on the video footage, regardless of the sources. Is we run computer vision models to basically generate tracks. So basically, it's a multi-object tracking problem that we solve, right? There's 22 players, there's a referee, assistant referees, there's a ball, and we all need to track them and assign an identity, calibrate our cameras to be able to translate pixel points to real world coordinates, and essentially the output that we try to deliver is per player a track for the full match with XY coordinates and a identity assigned that allows either us or other end users to do analysis on that for physical performance, tactical performance of the team, that sort of thing.
And so your camera technology, do you use it across all kinds of different, all kinds of sports?
Predominantly in football or soccer at the moment. So it is relatively sports agnostic. So any invasion-based team sport would work, but it's tuned to soccer at the moment.
And are there plans to expand that and go to all different kinds of sports?
Yeah, for sure. So for example, I am actively collaborating with the tennis federation as well to do some work on professional tennis.
Yeah.
And there's always plans to move into other sports. So for us as a company, soccer is the most important sport, or has been the most important sport, for obvious reasons. There's also there's a big commercial market,
100%.
also relative to other sports. But for example, if you look across to the United States, then there's also other sports that are really big there, and bigger markets as well. So there's always interest.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many field sports that it could obviously work on. So many. So I mean, to be fair, just the sporting market in general, there are so many different type of sports out there that could use this type of thing. It's just a never-ending list, essentially, for you to sort of expand to. So in a very good position that you're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, the list is ended a little bit by televised sports, right? Because that provides you with the easiest access to video footage, and also the biggest commercial market to explore, basically. But essentially, you're right. Yeah.
So how do you balance the responsibilities of hands-on coding and leadership in your role as head of data science and computer vision?
Good question, especially because those two responsibilities are challenging each other every now and then. So I would say that over time it has been a little bit of a natural transition from being a full-time hands-on coder to taking up more leadership responsibilities. At the time, or right now, I would say I like time-wise, I spend 40-50% of my time with management responsibilities and around 50-60% of the time coding. I find that really important to do and to keep doing, to keep in touch with the actual practical work, to remain of value. I mean, I am of value as a leader, but we are a small company, so we can't really afford people like myself to just only do management tasks and not get their hands dirty, so to say. I mean, it's every now and then it's a balance of priorities. But I try to divide my time more or less equally between hands-on work and leadership responsibilities. And I also get the benefit from it as well, because I like to believe that with doing the hands-on work, it also makes me a better leader and better manager. And I provide more value to the company by doing it this way.
Yeah. I feel like, in that kind of role, there would be just a lot of different things that you would need to juggle and work out your time for all these separate different responsibilities. And I guess it gets quite taxing after a while, I guess. There's so much to it. So how you manage that, it beats me, but you clearly do it well.
It's a challenge, 100%. 100%. And if I would have to take it on today, like going from 0 to 100 immediately, I wouldn't be able to do it. Especially, I mean, the most challenging thing is the context switching from a lot of different responsibilities and like doing coding stuff to management stuff and all different topics, which I grew into over the years. So it's also getting accustomed to being able to switch from topic to topic and to switch off as well, to let go of certain things, to assign responsibility to others and also give trust to others as well. So yeah, it grew over the years basically.
So what role does artificial intelligence play in extracting insights from sports data, and how has this evolved over the years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it has increased a lot over recent years. What people tend to forget is that in a lot of sports, including soccer, data has not played a really big role until the last decade, basically. So things like tracking data and computer vision applications, they are all from the last 10 years, so to
Exactly.
speak,
Yeah.
which is a very short time frame, right? So I like to believe that we're still unlocking the potential that that data has. And before that, there were already like basic stats. A lot of people might know the Moneyball thing in baseball, where they use a lot of statistical information to scout players, and that happens in soccer as well. But that's a lot of what has happened before is based on heuristics, right? So rule-based models that require a lot of domain knowledge, but relatively little AI. And over the last 3 to 5 years, especially, and a little bit before that, you see more and more AI-driven applications, and it at the moment it predominantly serves as a decision support tool. So we don't see really autonomous systems, right? If you compare it to other industries, there's no autonomous driving going on in a sports club yet. AI is more of a support tool that generates additional information that allows you to use smart tooling to find players similar to a sort of player you have right now. So it basically provides a really expanded toolbox for decision makers to do their work. That is how it has evolved over the most recent years. Yeah.
And I feel like, obviously, as you mentioned, it's only sort of been around for the last 10 years. And you can look at how much everything everything within AI has developed within such a short amount of time. And I feel like the way that it's evolving is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so within the next 5 years, it could be like the same amount of development in AI as there has been in the last 10 years. So much more is going to happen. So there's obviously going to be so many more different things that you can implement into your your software and your technology, and you can obviously improve it in so many different ways the more that it all evolves. Which is obviously, it's incredible how much things are changing and how many different like types of AI and ML that are coming out. Would you guys ever sort of integrate generative AI into your technology, do you think, now that that's quite a big thing?
To some extent, yes. So imagine that, for example, we have player agents as customers, or we make reports for a coach, and I can imagine that generative AI can easily play a role in generating scouting reports, or an agent making a report for a club to present its player, whether it's to generate visual content, whether it's to generate textual summaries of certain data. So I can really see generative AI as being a tool to help, to aid in our products and to aid our clients as well. Yeah.
And could you expand in what ways has the integration of data science and computer vision enhanced scouting and player recruitment processes for sports teams?
Yeah, I mean that is it. It is enhancing scouting in lots of ways. Imagine that traditionally the scouting model is you watch footage of a player, video footage of a player, and then you send someone to look at that player, and you gather information by observation, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you are very limited in what you can do because you're limited by human capacity, right? You need people, you need to send people to a location to watch it in the stadium. You need to watch match footage, so you're limited by time and human resources, basically. So you can only watch a subset of players, scout a subset of players, and there's many players you don't know about, especially because Well, if you're a very big team and you're scouting the big names, then we all know them. But most teams are not Barcelona or Chelsea. They don't have the financial power to buy the big players. So they scout in lesser known leagues, lesser televised leagues abroad. So you're limited in the players you can scout. And what data does is it helps you, it basically unlocks a very big pool of potential players you can look into, right? For example, we have data of over 200,000 male professional players that you can all scout. You could never all know them by looking at their video footage, and you can never go to all those matches basically. So it for starters, it changed the scouting game by creating a much bigger pool to scout in. And
Absolutely.
then what it does further is it allows you to narrow that list down to a interesting subset of players by using all kind of data-driven and AI-driven metrics and tools to find similar players, to see how that player would fit in your team, to predict how that player is expected to develop over next time frame. So essentially, you say, right, I have 200,000 potential players to scout. I use data to bring that list down to 10 or 20 players. And I already have a pretty clear image of what they can do and how I expect them to develop. And I can still do the traditional scouting video, go to those matches, but it's only for a very limited number of players. So it allows me to efficiently assign my resources, my human resources, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And so how do you see advancements in machine learning and AI influencing the future of sports performance analysis and player development?
Yeah, that's a very tricky thing, because I think the main thing we have to achieve, and I think that's not unique to sports, but sports is very illustrative of it, is that, I mean, it's first and foremost not, in my opinion, not about technological advancement, because we can already do really advanced things, and I'm sure that we can do more advanced things a year from now. But it's also about educating the end user, and having the proper adoption of those AI driven and data driven techniques, which, as I mentioned, it's not just in sports. I mean, sports is illustrative because we talk about an end user, typically coaching staff, that is very practical, right? Their core skill set, they are good in their job because they originate from that sport. I mean, they often are former players. They have a lot of hands-on experience on the field. They don't always have the data literacy and technical competency to work with AI models and data-driven techniques. And so we have to unlock it for them, but they really have to have a good understanding. So explainable AI, and then not explainable in the technical term of the word, but explainable in natural language terms, right? And then really having that end user adoption is key, I think, and is to further advance the field. And as I said, it's not just for sports, and it's also, if you look at things like the AI Act in Europe, it's also more or less, it becomes more mandatory for any AI application to educate your user and to be transparent about the trustworthiness and what it does and interpretation and all that. So I think the biggest advancement comes in, getting that end user on board, educating them to use the tools in the right way, so they can do more with things we actually already have, but they can get the most value out of those things before we can take a next step with technological advancements.
Yeah. So you did briefly mention earlier on about obviously how America has a lot of different sports that are televised, and that obviously you can obviously latch onto this and use this and expand your market there. And so you ventured into America with a new office, right? So how is this, and obviously the new market, influence the development and adoption of sports analytics technologies?
Yeah, good point. So traditionally, we have been doing business mostly in Europe, as their soccer is has always been thriving. And recently, we've ventured into different continents, including the United States, and especially the USA is a very interesting market for us from a commercial standpoint. One of the reasons being that the let's say, openness to sports analytics is somewhat different to Europe, where I would say that the sports industry in general can always be somewhat conservative, where people like coaches like to keep doing the things the way they are used to doing them and the way they experience as a player. But I would say that you see that in American sports, even the general population at large watching sports are very much more open to data, which makes sense, right? Because any televised, any broadcast session has way more data involved. People watching basketball, watching American football, they are used to all kinds of stats in the broadcast already, which is different to what we are, like we as Europeans experience in. I mean, we don't see that many stats if we watch a soccer match, so they're more receptive to it, which means that that it provides interesting opportunity for us for even a larger audience that we're used to in Europe. And we see that as well, where we grow very quickly in the United States, which is why we opened an office there as well. Yeah.
And so obviously you mentioned that you're currently focusing on sort of soccer and things like that, football. Will you soon venture into things like American football and basketball?
Well, we don't have any plans for the immediate future, in the sense that I like to believe that it's better to do one thing right than a lot of things off, so to say. So soccer or football is our main priority. If an interesting challenge appears, then we would always be open to that. For the little bit longer term, it's definitely on the list of things we would like to go for sure. Yeah.
I feel like football is arguably one of the biggest sports, obviously, across the world. So it is gonna obviously it's gonna take up a lot of your time, obviously doing football. Do you reckon you would ever venture into like sort of bat and ball games, like baseball, cricket, or anything like that? Do you reckon that's a possibility for you guys?
Theoretically, I would say it's a little bit further away from also the domain expertise that we have in-house, right? So what I experienced is that for the products that we develop and sell, that I mean, you also need to speak the language of the client. You need to understand the actual sport. You need to have I need to have knowledge about football. I don't need to be an expert coach, but being a data scientist working with football data, you need to understand the game at least. So football lies close to home. We have enough people with passion about, let's say, basketball or some other sports, but it's a little bit less for things like cricket and baseball at this point. So if we would venture into that, we would really need to find people with the right expertise to get on board in the company. So it would be further down the line, I'd say.
That's fair enough. Yeah, obviously there it can be future plans. I guess it is obviously more important to focus on those kind of sports that are a bit more popular than the others. And obviously, with football, you've got the World Cup. I know there's obviously cups for all different types of sports, but I feel like anyone would arguably say that the World Cup is probably one of the biggest, tournaments out there for football, for any kind of sport. And I guess once things get going and things start getting a lot bigger, then you can start taking it to these worldwide championships and worldwide tournaments, can't you? And then it would just explode. I guess you make complete that one thing first before you venture onto the new things, right? You want to make sure that this is 100% and it's perfect and it can't get any better, and then you can start taking that product over to different sports. I guess that would be the way to do it. But it's exciting, isn't it? And I guess there's so much to it. You're always going to be busy, aren't you, Floris? You're not going to be able to catch a break.
No, and that's probably the case for any like scale up business trying to grow and develop. I mean, you're always going to be busy, and especially in sports. I mean, what I experience is sports is a 24/7 business, right? But that's also the way that coaches perceive their jobs. I mean, they wake up in the middle of the night thinking about their game plan, and they want to. That's how sports work basically. I mean, it's not a 9 to 5 thing. So if you are a company like ours and you support those people, it always goes on, right? And it's so yeah, it definitely keeps us busy.
Exactly, everywhere I go. Are you one to go to like sports games and football matches?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, it changed over the years, to be honest.
Yeah,
Working in sports also slightly changes your perception
yeah. I
of that
thought that would
sport.
be the case.
At first, when I entered the sports world, I looked with a professional interest at a lot of games, and then that also decreases over time. And yeah, I mean, I like sports in general. I like to go to games every now and then, not
Yeah.
just football. But yeah, I'm interested in sports in general. So
Do you
yeah.
find do you find since working in this industry and working within like sort of sports technology, when you do go to games, you still thinking about work and still thinking about the technology side of things?
To some extent, I especially not only if I go to games, but let's say your average birthday party, when I tell people about what I do, then you end up in a lot of discussions about certain
Absolutely.
teams and how they play or should
Yeah.
play, and a lot of well, at least self-proclaimed experts debating
Yeah.
those guys. So then I end up, yeah, doing these things again to some extent. Yeah.
So, what trends do you foresee in the intersection of sports, technology, and data science over the next few years then?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest trends is that data and technology is becoming available to an increasingly large audience. So what I mean by that, and I like to call it like the democratization of data and sports analytics, is that data used to be something for the top of the top, the biggest clubs in the world that could afford those kind of things, and the biggest sports in the world that could afford those kind of things. But with technological advancement, with open source as well, I think that's a very important aspect as well. A lot of open source technologies, we see that the data adoption is much more affordable. So one of the things we focus on as well is, for example, youth leagues, women's football, areas where there's less money to spend, that did not used to have data in the past, but that we can now offer data to lower price. So technological advancement allows us to open up that data, like the possibilities of data, to a way larger audience. So that's one of the things where I really believe that will drive a certain bottom-up innovation. Because what I mean by that is, the more people work with this kind of data, the more creativity will be sparked as well, right? If a small group of people is working with it, then you try to do the best you can, but you need to be challenged with your ideas, and you need to have people to try and to experiment. And the more people work with it, the more experimentation goes on, and the better ideas will surface at one point. So I think that data democratization is a really important facilitator of innovation down the line. And yeah, next to that, I mean, you already mentioned the surge of generative AI over the last 1-2 years. Maybe, I
Yeah.
mean, like yesterday, basically, right?
Loaded.
Yeah. I think we still really have to find out what it can do and how it should do it, right?
Of
And
course, yeah.
what
There's a
its
lot of work to
shortcomings
be done.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think deep learning in general, whether it's for generative AI, whether it's for computer vision, um, it's becoming more available and easier to do for data scientists and for end users. And I mean, if I compare, that's maybe the most illustrative. If I compare my work in computer vision to my regular data science work, then if I work with tracking data, event data, tabular data, basically to unlock insights for clients, then I can find anything I need on the internet, go to Stack Overflow, get people that have done those kind of things, and let's say copy paste. I mean, it's not as simple as that, but a lot of information is available, a lot of open source tooling. When I go into computer vision, there's a way smaller community, because typically you need more expensive resources in terms of hardware and stuff like that to do this. You need bigger data sets. So it's harder, but it's becoming easier and easier because the field is growing. So I see, most advancements in the area of deep learning, whether it's generative AI, whether it's computer vision, whether it's other techniques, but also in sports in the coming years.
I feel like there's a lot to happen, and it's like I mentioned earlier. Obviously, AI develops and things happen so incredibly fast. I feel like for people like you that are actually working within that industry and working with all these different types of AI, it's almost near impossible to keep up because it's just so quick. It's just rapidly changing. So it's very impressive that you are actually able to keep up with it. And I feel like, obviously, especially with sports, I feel like there's so much that can be done, and you see all these different types of startups and companies that are trying to do all these loads of different types of things with AI and sports. I feel like it will just keep expanding and developing, and it's not going to stop. But it's very interesting to see, and obviously, like you mentioned, obviously seeing the different ways that you might be able to harness generative AI, that could expand and rapidly change within the next year or two in a way that you definitely could harness it, right? And it could obviously make things maybe like so much more easier to do what you do. But I guess you never know. There's never a way to know these things with AI, is there? It just happens, and then it's like, whoa, that happened. That's cool. And it just use it.
Yeah, I mean, that is the case. And I mean, you asked me earlier about like balancing the leadership role and the hands-on role. I think you just touched upon like the most challenging point there, and that is keeping up with all those developments, right? That becomes harder and harder actually when you take on more responsibilities. Because when it's just a practical hands-on role and focusing on one thing in a more specialized role, then keeping up is a natural part of that. The wider you venture, the more things you have to keep up with, and then that's
Absolutely.
probably. I mean, I try to. I like to think that I manage okay in that area, but it's definitely a challenge. Yeah.
I'm sure it is. Honestly, Floris, I could never do it. I could never keep up. That's why I just recruit in the space instead, because it just makes things easier. Um, and just finally, to wrap up this podcast, then, what advice would you give to aspiring data scientists that are looking to enter the sports industry or pursue a similar career trajectory?
Yeah, that's a really important point, especially given the number of people that like to enter the sports analytics industry. I get that question a lot, and I would like to highlight two separate things.
Yeah.
One being that it is really important to be a good communicator about the stuff that you do. So being able to explain the work that you do to a non-technical audience in a way that they understand and appreciate it is, I think, the most crucial skill to making it within, for example, our company, but probably within any company, but also in the industry at large. Because you have to be able to, as a data scientist, you're like, for us data scientists in our company, we're part of the development team, but also not completely, because we're also more on the client side than the average developer is. So we have to be sort of a translator, right? Where we have to be able to talk to the really technical people. We have to be able to understand really technical concepts in terms of machine learning and feature engineering and architecture and all kind of things. But then on the other hand, the insights that we generate end up directly with the end user. So we have to be able to talk to them as well. Talk to them in the literal sense of the word by talking to them and getting their input, but also talk to them by creating output visualizations and data that they tend to understand. So those soft skills, so to say, they're crucial for succeeding, I believe. And that brings me to the second part, which is basically getting your hands dirty and doing projects is the only way to really develop those skills. There's lots of open source data available nowadays, which is really enabling people to develop their skill set and to stand out. And you really need to get yourself skilled. I mean, as we discussed, right, it's a really new field. There's better and better university programs like educating data scientists, but still it's something oftentimes you have to learn yourself. I mean, data scientists come from all different areas, like myself, coming from a non-computer science background, but like from a sports science background, self-taught in coding to begin with. I mean, you have to get those things done, to keep working on it, and while doing it, try to explain it to, like on that birthday party we talked about, to the other people there that have no technical proficiency whatsoever. Try to explain what you do and why it's valuable. If you can do that, I'm sure you can explain it to a customer as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And definitely just get your head stuck in and just do as many projects as possible. I feel like, yeah, whenever I speak to anybody that's sort of within data science or machine learning or AI, they just say just get stuck in, just start. And that's the hardest part. So yeah, no, I agree. But thank you very much for that. And thank you for joining me today and sharing all your insights. Really, really appreciate it. It's been very interesting and I've thoroughly enjoyed recording this podcast with you. So thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me as well. I enjoyed being on there with you as well.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I wish you the absolute best of luck with everything, your future endeavors and everything that you're doing with your business. And looking forward to you venturing out into all these different types of sports. So yeah, good luck with that as well.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from leaders in the tech space.